Dibrig tú go díon nó chánig tú go dtí an chathair seo, fuair his neart taithí agus d'urbar de chuid scileanna. I ngacháte éigean tú, fecinn tú rud éige na chabhraigh tú a thógáil, ach inis tá tú ag féchant ar an todhchaí, agus beidir go bhfuil tú ag smaoinemh ar an áit as a dagan tú. In éireann, tastaíonn pleanálathe, siúnéirí, ploméirí, díanadóirí, inaltóirí, altíirí, banistóirí láithreáin agus níos móhain. Tastaíonn túhain, le do chuid scileanna agus taithí go léir, chun cabhrúlinn na mílte tithe a thógáil. Tá an domhan tóga agat, a níos tar arás agus tógan teach a thóg tú. Tuile eolais ag gov.ie/Building Ireland. Teachtareacht ó rialtas na hÉireann.
This episode is brought to you by Paranormal Playback, a new podcast where hosts Shar, Mel and Laura recap the spooky and entertaining world of paranormal reality TV. Each week they take a fresh look at popular shows like Ghost Adventures and Kindred Spirits, blending humour with insight as they pull apart what's happening on screen. The three of them are a mix of believers and skeptics, which makes for really fun conversations, sometimes leaning into mystery, other times asking the questions viewers might be thinking themselves. With their background in creative production, they know how these shows are put together, so they're great at pointing out the moments that feel real versus the ones that might be more for the cameras. And their segment, This Old Haunt, digs into the true crime side of paranormal investigations, separating fact from fiction. With Halloween coming up, it's the perfect time to add something spooky, funny and a little addictive to your playlist. For even more spooky, ghostly, paranormal content with a humorous spin, go check out Paranormal Playback. Hello and welcome back to another episode of Scary. If you're new here, my name is Will and each week I narrate your real life paranormal experiences as well as covering some famous paranormal cases along the way. Before we get into this week's episode, I want to say a special thank you to our new Patreon subscribers who are Imogen Buxton Pickles, Paul Ellis, Arabella and Natalie Brown. Thank you so much for signing up to the show's Patreon, and if this is something you're interested in, you can find the link in this episode's show notes or simply go to patreon.com/scaryaparanormalpodcast, where you can gain access to ad-free main episodes and exclusive scary episodes. But now, let's get into our next paranormal encounter. We moved to Bristol in the summer of 1996. I was 7 at the time. My sister was 10. The house was on a small estate on the edge of town. It was nothing fancy. 3 bedrooms upstairs. It was decent enough. The previous tenants had left it in not too bad of a state, but some of their furniture was still there. There was a tired old wardrobe and a mattress that had definitely seen better days. And in my room was this bookcase that had a rake of cigarette burns on the top of it. Back then we didn't have much, so Mum kept what was usable. My room was at the back of the house, overlooking the garden. You could see the neighbours' yards from my window. Clotheslines, broken fences. The view wasn't too bad, it was just ordinary, I guess. My sister got the front room, and beside that was Mum's. Some of the furniture in the other rooms got jumbled around a bit. I ended up with a wardrobe that creaked when it opened. It had a mirror on the inside of it that was slightly warped, and the glass was kind of cloudy at the edges. When you caught your reflection in it, your face looked off. It was definitely warped. It was your reflection, but not quite right. During the first week of staying in the house, I was lying in bed and I heard the garden gate swing open. It wasn't windy or anything. I remember that the air was pretty still and it had been really hot that day. Curious, I sat up, looked out my window, but I couldn't see anybody. This was a gate that was at the back of our garden. It really should have been locked. This was the beginning of something that would happen pretty regular. It didn't happen every night, just now and then after we had all gone to bed. I'd be lying on my bed, staring at the ceiling, and I'd hear the garden gate. Always the same soft squeak, and then the little metallic click when it closed. After a while, I stopped checking the window. Nothing or no one was ever there when I looked. Not long after this started to become routine is when I started having paranormal experiences. I started to see another child in my bedroom. This child would be roughly the same age as me, same height, same hair. It wasn't me or a twin, they just were a very similar looking child to me. This would always happen at night time or just when I was getting ready for bed. This child never spoke, not once. They didn't seem threatening. They would literally just be there. Sometimes sitting on the edge of the chair by the wardrobe. Sometimes standing by the window, looking out to the garden. And one time, which really stayed with me, I woke up and saw them inside the wardrobe. The door was kind of slightly open and they were crouched in the corner like they'd been there waiting for a while. Nearly as if they were waiting for me to wake up. They just seemed really harmless and really innocent, and I know that sounds so bizarre. They never stayed for very long. They would be there for a few moments and then be gone. And then I mightn't see them again for a couple of days, weeks at times. I told my older sister and my mum, and pretty sure that they just thought I had an imaginary friend. And I can understand why they thought that, because whenever I'd talk about this child, I'd talk about them in a way, oh, you know, there was somebody in my room and they're my age, they have the same hair. I was talking about them as if they were, you know, oh, just some child was in my room. After a while, I expect to see them, not every night, but fairly often. Especially if I heard the garden gate click, because, like I said, that was almost routine. The squeak, the click, then the silence. Then a few minutes later, they'd be there. Always in a different part of the room. Never really doing anything. Just watching, or sometimes just wandering to the window. Like they were just waiting, and then I'd look away, I'd look back, and they were gone. There was one particular night where I remember reaching out my hand to see what would happen, and it didn't get far. The second I moved closer to them than I ever had done before, it was like they just blinked out, like somebody switched off a light. And after that, I kind of got the impression that they didn't want to be touched. And I could understand that, because I hated anybody touching me. I will also firmly hold my hands up and say that I was a strange child, so retelling stories about seeing a ghost child in my room would not help me in any way. Nonetheless, as time went on, I insisted on telling my sister all about this ghost child, which would end up in arguments because she said I was lying, and then Mum would be called, there would be a big argument. I'd run off to my room, slam the door crying. And then with Mum working a lot of nights and picking up shifts where she could, we were left alone a lot of the time. And when she wasn't there to help referee arguments between me and my sister, it would go on for ages, and sometimes she'd just leave me on my own. She'd sneak off when she was supposed to be minding me and go hang out with her new friends. There was only one time that this spirit really frightened me. I had been asleep and I woke up to the sound of the wardrobe door after being slammed, or the only way I could describe the sound was if you banged something off the door and it kind of shuddered, and that shudder and creak woke me up because it was really, really loud. So I sat up, looked straight at the wardrobe, and then looked around to see if I could see anybody else in the room. No, completely empty. So I lay back down in bed and kind of wrapped the duvet around me. And then after a few moments, I felt a pair of hands push me on my back with such force that I fell out of the bed onto the ground. That is the only time that this spirit or entity, I don't know what you want to call it, ever made physical contact with me, and it was terrifying. Before that, I never felt afraid or in any type of danger. It was like something had crossed the line because, I don't know, I didn't really realise that it could make physical contact with me. The next time it appeared in my room, I just said to it, don't ever do that again. I didn't like that. There was no reaction, and like that, these interactions would last probably seconds, if even a minute, because you would literally glance away and they would be gone. That summer there was weeks of really dry, hot weather. My sister and I were both off school and we didn't spend much time together. She was older and had her own kind of routines and her own friend group now. I played in the back garden a lot, just kicking a ball around, drawing these chalk shapes on the ground as well. Anything to kind of pass the time, really. I also was oblivious to the fact that a new family had moved in next door. And during one of those long afternoons, somebody came knocking at the door. It turned out it was the kid from next door, and they had seen me in the garden a few times but had never spoke to me. They were about my age, maybe a little bit older. And they asked if I wanted to come out and play. And I said sure. And then they asked something that made me pause. Where's the other one? And I thought that they meant my sister. So I said, oh, she's with her friends. And they said, no, not her, the one that looks like you. Are you twins or something? They went on to say, you were both in the window the other day, just up there standing. I waved at you, but you didn't wave back. And I ended up telling them I don't have a twin. It's just me and my sister, that's it, and our mum. And I remember them looking really confused for a second and then just said, oh, maybe it was somebody else. It was an awkward moment. And then later that day, when more kids had joined us from these nearby houses, the one who had knocked at my door and introduced me to the group, they said, this is the one I was talking about, but they're a liar. They said they don't have a brother, but I saw them. There were two of them. And some of the kids laughed, and then some of them just kind of looked at me strangely, and I really didn't know what to say. And when I think back now, I'm so glad that that happened. At the time it was devastating, because here was me meeting this group of friends finally, and I was being introduced to them as a liar. But now as an adult, I'm so grateful it happened, because to me it was evidence that this thing that was appearing in my bedroom was real. It wasn't something I imagined happened to me as a kid. My last memory of this spirit or entity appearing in my room was just like one of the many other times. Them standing at the window looking out. We ended up not staying in that house for very long. My mum ended up meeting a guy and we ended up moving to a different location. Years later, I asked my sister what she thought of the house, and she just said it always felt really cold, even in the summer. Just really, really cold, and she hated it there. We weren't there for very long at all, really. And I asked her, did she remember me talking about my imaginary friend? She said, of course, you wouldn't shut up about them. But now she does believe what happened to me, after many conversations and me insisting what I saw was real. As I got older, I'm not the kind of person who absolutely believes everything in the world of the paranormal, but I am definitely drawn to some things in it. And I do not think I'm in any way psychic. I don't see things. I now live in a small flat with my partner and life is pretty normal. But there have been two things that have happened to me in the past few years that I can't quite explain. The first one happened when I was at home alone and I was making tea in the kitchen, and I heard my partner call my name from the other room. I think my initial thought was, oh, they're home from work early. And then my phone started ringing and I looked down at the screen and they were ringing my phone. So I answer, and my partner starts to tell me how they're going to be late leaving work and just wanted to let me know, and was asking how my evening was going. It was one of those weird moments where everything feels upside down. They weren't at home. They hadn't been at home. I was in the flat on my own. Another time, a friend I hadn't seen in months, I heard their voice shouting from the hallway again, really, really loud. Then, about 5 minutes later, they called my phone and asked me if I wanted to meet for lunch. Maybe I'm just tuned in or something, I don't know. Or maybe it's just a weird glitch in the whole matrix. Like when you hear your name or a voice whenever you're just falling asleep. Still, it's very strange. Thank you to Anonymous for sending in their paranormal experience. I do not want any ghost children anywhere near me, please. Now, let's get into our second paranormal encounter. When I was 14, my parents went away for a 2-night break. It was the first time that they had ever left me on my own, but I wasn't really alone. I was staying with my aunt just a few roads over. My aunt lived in one of these quiet cul-de-sacs. I just remember our house being extremely quiet. We had had dinner, and afterwards I realised I had left my charger back in our home place. So she told me to be quick. It was the summer, it was still bright out, and I headed back over to my home place to get the charger. I just want to state that nothing paranormal had ever happened in our house before. I unlocked the front door, stepped in, went up straight upstairs to my room to get the charger, opened my bedroom door. Inside my bedroom was this completely normal looking man that was in probably his early 30s. He was just standing there looking at me. He didn't move or he didn't speak, and I was pretty much frozen with fear. I thought this guy was probably going to attack me, and assumed that he was a burglar or robbing the house or something. He was standing pretty close to the window. And then in a split second, he ran towards me at speed and then completely, all I can describe it as, disintegrated right in front of me. I was so terrified, I ran out the door, didn't lock the house, ran back to my aunt, told her that there was somebody in the house, got my uncle. We all went back up to the house. Absolutely empty. Nothing stolen. No signs of forced entry. Back door locked. All windows secure. I cannot explain what happened. It was the most mind-bending experience I've ever had. Thank you to Daniel for sending in his paranormal experience. And don't forget, if you have your own paranormal experience, you can send it to scaryaparanormalpodcast@gmail.com, and it just might get made into a future episode. Please do not worry about the length of your paranormal experiences. They can always be tied in with other episodes. Thank you for listening, and don't forget to hit that follow button so you don't miss any future episodes. And join me next time for another episode of Scary.
Dibrig tú go díon nó chánig tú go dtí an chathair seo, fuair his neart taithí agus d'urbair de chuid scileanna. I ngacháte éigean tú, fecinn tú rud éige na chabhraigh tú a thógáil, ach inis tá tú ag féchant ar an todhchaí, agus beidir go bhfuil tú ag smaoinemh ar an áit as a dagan tú. In éireann, tastaíonn pleanálathe, siúnéirí, ploméirí, díanadóirí, inaltóirí, altíirí, banistóirí láithreáin agus níos móhain. Tastaíonn túhain, le do chuid scileanna agus taithí go léir, chun cabhrúlinn na mílte tithe a thógáil. Tá an domhain tóga agat, a níos tar arás agus tógan teach a thóg tú. Tuile eolais ag gov.ie/Building Ireland. Teachtareacht ó rialtas na hÉireann.
Streaming is changing the way we watch live sports. And your internet connection can be the difference between catching the game-winning touchdown as it happens or hearing about it from your neighbor's cheers. That's why Comcast is building the network of the future. Using cutting-edge AI and edge computing technology, we're bringing fans closer to the action in stunning high definition with ultra-low latency. It's not just fast, it's game-changing. Learn more at ComcastCorporation.com/sports. It's the big sale of the year at All Modern, a Wayfair specialty brand. October 26th through the 29th. Save up to 70% off modern furniture and decor. Plus, fast and free shipping. Shop the big sale of the year at allmodern.com.